There we go. All right. It's fun seeing Pam with the straight hair.
Yeah, Pam with the straight hair. As long as it doesn't rain and I hold my mouth just right for a couple days, we will be okay. Hi, everyone. I am Pam Barnhill. No, this is the truth. This is the truth. I'm Pam Barnhill, and I am the host of 2 homeschooling podcasts, the Your Morning Basket podcast, with over 109 episodes, maybe even 110 now. I've kind of lost count. All about morning time, believe it or not. And then also the 10 Minutes to a Better Homeschool podcast. I have 3 kids. I live in Alabama with my husband, my dogs, my kids. The kids are 16, 15, and 12, and we have homeschooled from the very beginning. You can find me here on this YouTube channel and at pambarnhill.com. And I'm joined by my good friend somewhere, Mystie Winkler.
Yes, I am Mystie Winkler. I also have 2 podcasts. One is Simply Convivial, which is all about homeschooling, homemaking, and doing life cheerfully. And then also the newer Simplified Organization podcast, which is about which is interviews with other moms on lessons that they've learned and tips that they're sharing. So that's a fun one to just learn from one another. And I homeschool I'm only homeschooling 3 kids now. I have 2 graduates. So my homeschool is getting smaller. But we've homeschooled everyone from the beginning. And also my husband and I were both homeschooled as well. And we're just keeping it going. So fun. How was your homeschool week? Interrupted homeschool week, Ben, right?
Yeah, it was an interrupted homeschool week because I just got back from the Great Homeschool Convention in Cincinnati, Ohio. And so, yeah, the homeschool week was a little broken up. You know, I left a list here at home, and each of the kids had a list just on an index card because it was a short list. I took photos of them with my phone and gave the photos to my husband in case the kids lost their list.
Oh, you mean that happens at your house?
You know, sometimes it does. And it's just the most amazing thing ever that the list gets lost. But Dad had a copy. I don't know that he checked up, though, on the list because the youngest decided all of a sudden that he was not capable of doing the keyword outline in the rough draft by himself. So, you know, at least my older child did it. He said, "I think it's bad, Mom." To which I responded, "It's okay. All writing is supposed to be bad in the beginning. That's why we revise. That's why we do the checklist. That's why we edit. But you did it, and that's what matters." The youngest, he's on my list now. So.
You lost the list, you get on a different list.
Yeah. Well, he didn't lose it. I just think he just didn't do it. He's like, "Oh, no, this is too hard. It's too hard without Mom." And so I'm just like, not going to do it. Mm-hmm. Which is funny because he had been doing so well, not needing my help if I were sitting in the room. So it's just, they're funny that way. So,
yes, they are.
Yeah. And then we took today off. I went and got my hair done instead of homeschooling. But it was planned. I always plan the day after conventions as a recovery day. So
yes. Well,
that's... How about you?
Yep, that's just a point of making a realistic plan. That's one reason why we plan, is to remind ourselves of just the way things are actually going to go and just make that a part of the plan. So yeah, our week last week was spotty, and I took that into account on our plan also because we went on that field trip that I told you about last week. So last Wednesday, we went on a local field trip. Like, we got on a tour bus, and there were 56 people total. About 40 or so of them were all college students. So they opened up this college class tour to a few paying participants. And my husband was able to go, and the 3 youngest kids. And so we went all around the area and learned about the Nez Perce, who were on this land before settlers and before Lewis and Clark, and we learned about Lewis and Clark coming out here, and about one of the battles where there were troubles with getting the tribes onto the reservations, and we learned about the how the U.S. government reneged on their different promises and policies and changed the terms of the reservations, and then these battles that started that is just super sad because they didn't really need to become wars and battles. It was just like this incident led to this incident, and so someone shot a gun, so then that made it a war. And then the U.S. Army decided that they had to win at all costs because they just lost the battle with Custer. So their reputation was on the line. So they just pursued this one all out. And it was a terrible, terrible tragedy. So I learned a lot of names that, like, buildings, even back in my hometown, which is like, 2.5 hours the other direction. There were names. It's like, oh, that's why that building is named that. And oh, yeah, that school is named that. Like, oh, I learned, like, these names are familiar because this stuff is named after them. And so anyway, that was really fun. And it was really interesting because this college class is like a general history class. And they're learning about how what we know about history is mediated through the authors. And so the class, he was focusing on different sources of history. So then the point of this tour was locations as a source of history, and items as a source of history. So we went to a couple museums, and learned about the first missionary outfit out here, and saw a statue monument sort of thing that was put up. At the time it was put up, it was like a roadside pullout, but they've changed where the highway is, so now it's in the middle of a park. But it was like a monument on the side of the road when it was put up in the 1920s, and it claims that this is the site of the first homes in the area. Like, this is the site of the first home, school, and church. And it's like, so it is. It is the site of the first church. That's true. But, So it was a really interesting look at how the history is told over different time periods, and just very fascinating. It was a very good professor leading the tour. It was very
I was
fun.
wondering if you were going as a college class that was doing these kind of studies to like public places and listening to like these docents and then kind of going back and evaluating, or if the professor was actually leading the tour.
Yeah, the professor was leading the tour because he actually, before he was a professor, he was a park ranger. And he was a park ranger of these lands too. So we saw petroglyphs. So like the chiseled on the rocks.
Cool.
And he knew all about them, and we got into a few of the different extra tour spots because the park rangers are his friends, and they're like, oh yeah, sure, you can have this key. We usually keep this closed, but you guys can go in. And so it was a lot of fun. Of course, the biggest moment of our trip was that the bus went in a ditch.
Oh, well, yeah.
At our second stop.
I'm most excited about that.
So it put us 3.5 hours behind schedule. So we had to skip one of the stops.
I was going to say, it was like a 14-hour day to begin with. So
yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So that was it. We got to see a tow truck. And I mean, this was one of the giant tour buses that's like an airplane on the inside with, your own air and light and everything. And so Geneva was a little bit scared that it was going to tip right over while it was being towed out. And it did look like it was touch and go.
Oh, goodness. So how much of that local history did you know before you went on the tour?
we did a little bit of the professor sent out some reading that was required for his students before the tour, and we did some of it, so we were a little bit prepared. But before that reading, I didn't really know actually any of it. There was this other missionary that came to this spot who came out with the Whitmans in Walla Walla, which that area I knew about before, but I didn't know that there was another missionary that came out with him and set up a different camp. And so, yeah, it was really fascinating. Well worth the day of no other schoolwork being done. And then the next day was a recovery day.
Yeah. And you counted it as a school day, right? The field trip day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let's just establish that right now. You always count the field trip day as a school day, you know.
And for me, that's just in my mind, because I don't have to keep attendance or count school days officially or anything. But we didn't do anything else that day, and we didn't catch up. I just adjusted.
Yeah, love it. Awesome. So awesome. Well, it sounds like a good week. The homeschool convention was hopping. So that was awesome. We are continuing our trend of seeing a huge number of people coming back to homeschool conventions this year and just really being super excited to be there, and the vibe being really good about everything. And just so many people who are, you know what was fun? Actually, I had more than one person come up to me and say, I saw you last year. Last year was my first year. And thank you for what you're doing and everything. It was really helpful last year, and I'm so excited to keep going. So that's great to have those people who have been doing it a year and they're really excited to keep going. It's like, okay, yay, you survived, and you want to do it again.
That is fun.
So that was awesome. Yeah. So it was a great convention. I think there were, couple thousand families there, more than. Nice. So it was a good bunch. Yeah.
Well, it's Cincinnati too, which is always one of the big ones, right?
Yeah. Yep. Always one of the big ones. So it's definitely, things are on the upswing, which you love to see. So.
Yes. Very good.
Yep. All right, so we are going to talk today about reading. So because this is the Homeschool Teachers Lounge, and Misty and I, neither one of us homeschool into the summertime, we're actually going to be going on hiatus in a few weeks. When is your last week, Misty? Have we picked a date yet?
I don't think we have. We are in week 4 of 6 for our final term, so our last school day is May 13th.
Okay, so May 13th is your last day. Mm-hmm. We will probably go through the 20th. So, we can, so we're not making any promises, guys. We'll get before the end of May. We'll let you know when. Because I always say I'm going to such and such a date, never make it. I'm going to start saying I know Thomas is going to space camp the week of May 30th. And so we will definitely stop by the 27th, but we'll probably stop before then. I was actually looking at beach houses earlier.
The best way to end a school year.
Right. So I sent a few to my husband and said, when you get to where you're going, call me so we can talk about these. Yeah. So we go to the beach and call it good. But anyway, so a few more weeks. And what we thought we would do in these last few weeks is we thought we would talk about different curriculum choices, because we know that that's what a lot of you are doing right now, is thinking about next year's curriculum and thinking about what do I want to use for next year. And so we thought that curriculum choices would be a great way to kind of round up the school year, because we get asked a lot, what curriculum do you recommend? What curriculum do you use? And so we wanted just to give you some recommendations. So we're going to be talking today all about reading, and maybe a little bit about spelling. We can kind of roll that one in there as well. And then giving you some of our best tips for teaching reading and spelling. All right, Misty, we're going to start with you. What was your favorite reading curriculum?
Well, I used the same phonics curriculum that my mom used, and my mom found it at a homeschool curriculum fair, a local fair. in the 80s. It was just,
Wow.
a 3-ring binder that some guy was selling. And it's similar to spell. Is it spell to read and
Spell
write?
to write and read.
Spell to write and
I think
read.
spelled.
But it's way simpler. Like that one has like you memorizing
Okay.
rules, and it's a very complex, big old system. This is the same
I've known people to
philosophy.
use that one, and it was a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. This is the same kind of philosophy where it's a vertical phonics approach, and you learn the sounds, and then you learn words along with. I mean, most phonics programs, right? But vertical phonics means that you learn a is a ah, not just first, and then you learn words, and then you learn other, you build other sounds later.
Right.
You just learn all the sounds at once. And then you also learn phonemes kind of as single sound units, kind of from the very beginning, and they're arranged by frequency of use. So that program, I just used the same one because I was already familiar with it. That was the biggest reason why I used it. So I didn't have to learn a new thing. I had
And you
helped.
owned it.
Yeah. Well, I bought my own copy.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The guy was
Like,
selling
did
it
you
online.
inherit this? Did your mom teach everybody to read and then give you the copy? Or
And so he has a website, and it's still up, and it still looks like it's being sold, but he doesn't answer any emails or phone calls or anything. And so we don't know what happened to him, but it's not sold anymore. So it's similar in approach or style to my friend Brandy Vensel's teaching reading with Bob. And we did use Bob books along. By the time we learned enough sounds, we used the Bob books to practice reading, because the phonics program was pretty much just a system of sounds, and you learn them and recite them, chant them, and it has word lists, and then that's it.
right. Well, let's talk about teaching reading with Bob for just a minute, because that is Brandy Vensel's program, and she does use Bob books to teach reading, and it's a very economical choice, and it's also the method that Brandy used to teach all 4 of her kids to read, right?
Yeah. And she was a reading tutor before she had kids, so she kind of pulled some of that experience that she had before. So yeah, and she uses, like, you keep a notebook as you go.
Right. And she shows you how to set it up on the website.
Yeah.
She shows you exactly how to set up the notebook, and she has the curriculum there. And then, of course, you have to buy the Bob books to go along with the curriculum as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's something very similar to what Misty used. So,
Yep.
now, our favorite reading curriculum was all about reading. So, we used that. I did not use it for my daughter. I wish I would have used it for my daughter. I can't even remember. I think I used something with her, like a Reading Made Easy or something, and she did learn to read. But I wasn't, there you go. I wasn't, like, when my son came along, he struggled a little bit more, and I knew we needed something else. And so I floundered for a little while and tried a few different things. And that was when I found All About Reading and absolutely fell in love with it. We thought it was fabulous, and used it all 4 levels for him, and then used it all 4 levels for my second son as well. And then it was after we were in level 4 with one of the boys that we got a dyslexia diagnosis. And, the reading just, it was good. It was really good. So no problems reading now, can read all the texts and everything that they need to read. Don't necessarily enjoy reading, but can do it, So definitely prefers audiobooks, but the reading skills are there, and, can read fluently, read out loud, things like that. So a couple of things I loved about All About Reading. So Misty, it did teach all of the 4 sounds of A at one time. So you would go through and you would learn like all the sounds. I didn't realize that that's what vertical phonics was. But then you would go back and focus on the A sound, and it did do the frequency. So like the first sound of A is the A sound, and the second sound is the A sound, and the third sound is the ah sound, because of the frequency of how often they were used. And we did all of the, so we would learn all 4 sounds, but then we would go back and then we would just focus on the A sound of A. So we liked the manipulative part. We liked the tiles. And actually, we liked it when we retired the tiles and got the app instead. Really liked that a whole lot because that made everything super easy. And then my very, very, very favorite part of the program, and quite honestly, my kids' favorite part too, were the readers. Because they were interesting, they were engaging from the very, very beginning, and just they became things that my kids love to read, because so often reading readers are not that interesting, and these definitely are.
Yeah. So. I was just talking with my brother about that a couple of weeks ago, because he has a 5-year-old who's learning those first initial sound. He's in that Bob Books phase, and like the early readers or reading level 1 at the library are actually like pretty well beyond that. The books for when just a few sounds and you're starting to put together, be able to blend those sounds to make words. They're just so few and far between, especially when you're using a program that doesn't use sight words. Then some of those, bigger name, readers just really aren't. And so finding a program that has good readers is a big, big deal.
Yeah, we love the readers. And it was funny because my kids could choose other picture books to bring to me, but sometimes they would want to get their reader and read it themselves. Nice. There were just a couple of stories. I remember the one about the fox in the box. And there was one about Pam and Jam. And they just liked the story. They were simple stories, but I think it was the illustrations, quite honestly, that just made the story so delightful to them, because there's not a whole lot you could do with a fox in a box. But I think it was the illustration told more about the story than just the words themselves. Yeah. And so that was, I think that was kind of what did it. So yeah, we love that program. And when Thomas was done with level 4, he shut it and he looked at me. He's like, "So are we starting level 5 tomorrow?" And I'm like, "Oh, Bubby, I'm sorry. There is no level 5. It was a little bit of a rude awakening for him. He was like, "Oh." So we had to start finding other good things to read. So that was good.
Nice. Yeah.
So while we have a few extra minutes before we give some tips, what did you use for spelling?
I tried a few different things for spelling. We never really did that much with spelling consistently, really. It wasn't my first 2. We did copy work, and my first 2 were early readers and naturally just readers, and I think pretty visual. And so, just correcting spelling in work that they did seemed to be enough for them. And so it wasn't until my 3rd that I really felt like, oh, wait a sec, no, we need to do spelling. I didn't want just spelling to be an automatic thing that we did just because. So my 3rd needed some spelling help, and so I tried Spelling Wisdom from Simply Charlotte Mason. And that's been what I've used with her, with 2 of them. I've had 2 that need a little bit more spelling than just correcting work that they do incidentally in other subjects.
So that Charlotte Mason method of spelling through the studied copy work, or is it studied copy work or studied dictation at that age?
Studied dictation is what we did.
Yeah, dictation would make more sense. Yeah. Sorry, that was. Yeah. Okay. So studied dictation for spelling using the Spelling Wisdom program from Simply Charlotte Mason. We did So all three of mine needed spelling. Though I will say my youngest was he kind of got to stop before he didn't have to go as far as everybody else did. Um, and then so we did all about spelling, and you do it a year behind the all about reading. So then it becomes review. So you do all about reading level 1, and then you finish that. When you start all about reading level 2, then you do all about spelling level 1. And it worked really well for us to do it that way. And then once we finished all about reading level 3, my daughter moved into Phonetic Zoo from IEW, and she was able to do that independently until I felt like she didn't need it anymore. And so she only did level 1 of it. And then my son tried it, and it didn't really jive with him. And so he asked me to go back and order all about spelling level 4. And so I did that, and that was what we did with him. And now we don't keep doing spelling just to keep doing spelling. We've got a good grasp on the basics, and then they can look up the other things that they need. So,
Yep.
So what are your best tips for teaching reading?
One of my favorite things with early readers was actually working in just phonics review and practice outside of phonics time. Like, we sat down with the phonics book for like 10 minutes 3 times a week on a good week. And that was school, basically, for a 5 and 6-year-old. But, if we sat down to read a picture book, or we sat down with an alphabet book, I wouldn't just say the name of the letter as we turned it, but say the name and the sound. A, right. A, ah. Or, they have the letter magnets on the fridge. And so if they pull one off, you say, oh, that's A, ah. And so, and I think that kind of little bit here and there, it doesn't like go on a lesson plan as an official lesson, but that's the kind of technique, I think, that really helps it sink in, where you're just approaching it naturally here and there. And because we are around all the time, we can, as moms, just take those opportunities as they're presented and not force it into like, oh, we have to do reading for this chunk of time, and then it doesn't apply anywhere else in life. I think it's with those reading lessons that we begin that learning is just happening all the time, here and there, throughout life.
Okay. So normally you and I don't disagree with each other, but I'm going to say my number one tip, especially when you have kids who are struggling with reading, is to be consistent with it. So don't, like, I would not do it 3 days a week. That was definitely something that I felt like we needed to do every single day. Having said that, we kept very short lessons with it. So it was better for us to do, 5 or 10 minutes, even when I had kids who were older and moving into higher levels. I still kept the lessons short because it was such a struggle. And so we would consistently do it every day. We would just keep the lesson short and not let it go too long or become too taxing, because I do think it was physically and just mentally draining,
Yeah.
I think that's my biggest tip, is let it be consistent with it. Keep it short, but be consistent with it and do it often. And so when I would write out my goals for the school year, back when I had kids who were really struggling with learning to read, when I wrote my goals out, that was reading was the thing that didn't get dropped. Even if other things got dropped, reading was the thing that we did every single day. That went on my MVD. That was my minimum thing that absolutely had to get done. So especially when we were in the thick of some of those lessons where I just didn't want them losing anything.
Yeah.
So, Laura says, if you have a struggling reader who's severely dyslexic, do you worry about spelling or wait until the reading is better? So, Laura, I don't know if you were here when I said that All About Spelling runs a year behind All About Reading and is almost like a review. So with my dyslexic kiddo, it was great because we got the reading going first with the All About Reading. We got the basics of all of that down. And then we did that All About Spelling a year behind. And so that was a review of those concepts. And it was always super confusing for me because I had a kid who was about a year behind. He was like, he started and then he was catching up with his older brother. And so he was a year behind. And so I had like a reading lesson here and then this spelling lesson that was a year behind. And then I was also doing the reading lesson that was a year behind. And then eventually we got another spelling lesson that was a year behind. So it was just crazy. It was crazy. But so yeah, that staggering of about a year is what we did. And one of the wonderful things about All About Reading is they will help you with any kind of placement or anything like that. If you call All About Learning Press, they'll help you on the phone with that kind of stuff too.
That's nice.
One more question. Cynthia Christine, tips for a 4-year-old wanting to learn to read, has been asking since 3.5. What do you do with that, Misty? I never had that issue.
I always think that if the child's asking for something, I don't want to turn them away, because then when I want them to do it, like they've like, no, we don't really have to. Like, you want to take advantage of the enthusiasm that they have without spending it. So without using it up. So if they want to do a reading lesson, then say, sure. And like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, or just have a couple, either letter magnets or index cards that have a few letters or an alphabet book, and just say like learning the sounds there and have them repeat them after you and tell like this is a reading lesson, and don't make it overcomplicated, because just reviewing and just taking them seriously and giving them a little, it will build, and you just want to foster that desire without worrying about progress.
If they say no some days.
Right.
Yeah, be okay if they say no. So if they're like, yes, I want to learn to do this, and you buy a program and you start doing it with them, and then all of a sudden they go, nope, don't want to do it, well, then you've got to be okay with that. Because technically they're too young. Other than the fact that they're asking for it. So no, I agree. I think if a kid's asking for something, do it with them, enjoy it for a few short minutes, like meet them where they are, because my friend Colleen Kessler from Raising Lifelong Learners will tell you that there are some kids out there who will be speeding ahead, but I think that's great advice. I love it. Don't spend it. Use it, but don't spend it. So I like it a lot. Cynthia, I agree with you on your last assessment there about that particular program. I felt like it was scattered a bit too. So, all right. Well, we are going to head off. Misty has like some fun, fabulous appointment that she's got to go to. So she's ditching me for the rest of the afternoon. No, I'm just kidding.
You're making me wish it was a hair appointment.
I got kids who have to be fed and taken to Civil Air Patrol, so we're going to be doing that. And I'm like probably going to sit in the car and read because I'm still tired. But we'll be on Misty's channel next week. We don't know what we're talking about yet, but it'll be something related to curriculum. So come and join us there.
Sounds good. All right. See you then, Pam. Bye.
Bye.